Well, 2021 was quite the year, wasn't it? I know we all learned a lot in 2021, so that's what we're going to discuss here today. What did we learn and what can we take forward with us into 2022? But as usual, before I get started, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Anything you hear here today is just my opinion about what I'm seeing in the markets. And if you take any trades blindly based on anything that I talk about here today, you're going to end up losing all your money and living in a van by the river. Now, with that said, Bitcoin is selling off here as I was preparing to record this video, this update video, and it's predictably doing so for a couple of reasons. We've seen the same exact pattern play out time and time again throughout this year. Different variations of these patterns, but nonetheless similar behavior in all of these events. If you look right over here to the left of the screen, you've got the summer sell-off. And of course, we had a bit of a very quick trap move and then some more selling pressure. Ultimately, this was the final capitulation and then our spring move back out of this pattern. And right now, we have a very similar setup. As you can see, I've got marked out here the trend line that we're going to be watching for a break to the upside of. But until then, we're looking for now trading in the bottom half of this range. This, of course, is one of many things that we learned about in 2021, more about the Wyckoff price action. What's interesting about this is 2021 has seen very definitive Wyckoff patterns play out to a T on the Bitcoin chart. Now, at some point, of course, that's going to become less obvious as time goes on, and it has become less obvious. The last couple of rounds of this have looked less and less obvious, but that's the story for 2021. Now, coming out of 2020, if you recall, when I started this channel, we were very focused on talking about technology and different altcoins and how looking for the best opportunities in the market. And that's something we'll try to return to in 2022. But the hallmark of 2021 really was the clear price manipulation and the manipulation perhaps even of information and the retail trader as we try to navigate these markets. And of course, everything trades around the liquidity around Bitcoin and what's happening with Bitcoin and largely with Ethereum as well. But as long as these patterns play out in Bitcoin, I think it's going to be, we're going to have to continue to learn and adapt to this sort of manipulation. It is just going to be a reality. So, with that in mind, what other things do we learn about in 2021 that can help us to navigate this sort of price action that we're experiencing since the beginning of this year? Well, if you recall as well, in addition to looking for the best altcoin projects and looking at the best technologies, we dove into on-chain metrics and the methodologies around on-chain and analysis of Bitcoin is kind of a developing art, if you will. And there's a lot of things there were a lot of patterns that we looked for in prior market cycles, that things that unfolded on-chain, Bitcoin on-chain, mostly in 2017, that people were projecting forward to now. And the other thing that's become apparent to me is that it's going to be less and less correlated over time as the market matures, as things change. So what are some of the better indicators? Well, we continue to see this very clear relationship between coins coming on and off of exchange and price. And coins coming on exchange can give us a bit of a hint that we maybe have some short-term selling pressure. And then a lot of times coins come off of exchange actually after price has appreciated. So the coins coming off of exchange in this 2021, we saw a pretty sustained drawdown late 2020 into early 2021 of coins coming off of exchange as price was rising. That's a healthy correlation you see as I'm dragging along here. Then we saw a large increase in coins coming onto exchange as we had some very strong sell pressure. Now, in a very short-term time frame, if you're very keen to what's going on, you can try to pick up on this. And here, more recently, you see this last couple of days, we've had this coins coming onto exchange. You see it starting to inch up here a little bit, similar to what we had, in May and April, but especially the ending of April, first part of May here. But we've seen the precipitous decline the last 24 hours here as well. So this is a situation we'll continue to monitor. But this sort of data has been actually pretty useful all in all. And for example, another thing to note is like right now we have most of the new coins coming onto exchange are coming onto Binance, whereas other coins are reducing on exchange, which means people are either taking those coins and moving to other exchanges or to cold storage. And so when we look at the aggregate total of coins on exchange, this gives us a picture of the conviction of the buyers or sellers in the market. As you see coins come onto exchange, that generally signals an intent to sell. As you see coins come off exchange, that generally signals an intent to hold. Now, there's a lot of other metrics people look at, different R-HODL ratios or MVRV scores, so these R-HODL waves and MVRV-Z and market realized values. A lot of these indicators to me are the really derivatives of other kind of core data. So I prefer to look at the core data, not so much the derivative data, these derived ratios. So hopefully that's something that we can continue to improve and understand better as 2022 goes on. I feel like I have a better handle for it myself now than we did coming into the year because I was more apt to look at metrics that other people were looking at as opposed to looking at the raw data. And now I'm more focused on just looking at the raw data and comparing that to several other pieces of information and piecing it all together as opposed to trusting largely in especially derivatives of the raw data. The other thing that's been a great help is looking at the open interest levels. That our most recent sell-off, we didn't see a large increase in funding rate, which is another metric that we've been learning to watch more and more closely as it continues to have a greater impact on market price. But the forward futures funding rate is one of the most important metrics to watch, especially as price starts to increase. Right now, we're looking at pretty neutral forward funding rate, futures funding rate. It's actually starting to tick up just a little bit here. We had a bit of a sell-off when we hit close to 0.001 the other day, or 0.01 the other day. Anytime we get around 0.3 is really getting overheated. But then the other part of this is the open interest in general. So both the size of the open interest in relation to the spot trading and the perpetuals funding future rate are two things that we've learned to watch a lot more. So hopefully these can continue to help give us insight as to what the market may be doing. As you can see here in early December, the initial really large sell-off we had down to 49,000, we actually went into negative funding rate territory and then bounced right back to slightly positive. Not overheated per se, but still slightly positive funding rate. The one thing that continues to perplex me that I think I have a good opinion on and a good read on, but I'm reserving my judgment because there is a world where my current read is inaccurate. But it's the Bitcoin dominance, the percentage of the total cryptocurrency market cap that Bitcoin represents. Now, of course, as time goes on, as more and more projects develop and there's more value outside of the core Bitcoin layer 1 chain, the percentage of the total market cap that Bitcoin makes up will likely continue to shrink over time. As you can see, if I go to a much longer time frame, let's go to the weekly, it's clearly in a long-term downtrend. But there are times when it starts to bottom out and reverses. And the two reasons that this chart will reverse and head back up is if we get a crypto-wide sell-off and other assets sell off more so than Bitcoin. And the other is the few times that Bitcoin actually breaks out on its own and value flows from altcoins into Bitcoin. We've been sitting on, it's kind of a triple bottom at this point right now. It looks like it's trying to put in a bottom. 40% seems to be really holding pretty strong here. And really since the summer sell-off, when we bounced off of that, alt season, really the major alt season that we had really concluded in May. And the big bounce that we had here in May was initially from the sell-off, the summer sell-off. And then the big bounce we had in September was when price rose precipitously September through the end of October. And you can see here Bitcoin dominance, if I zoom in a little bit, topped out toward the end of October from the beginning of September. So this was a big rise in price by Bitcoin. And so I'm very curious and cautiously watching this 40 level. And so I haven't made a lot of moves because I'm waiting to see if this 40 level were to break down. That means that the market does have continued interest in projects outside of Bitcoin. And the real level that we watched, the alt season 2 that we had if you will, in January 2018, we reached a low of 35% of the market was Bitcoin, as other things really went very parabolic. Now, I expect this to kind of normalize and be more range bound as we head down, a little bit less volatile. So that's a little bit of what we're seeing, I think, is the volatility is starting to slow down. But if you recall, late 2020, Bitcoin was very strong and a lot of alts were bleeding in value versus Bitcoin. And then ever since the turn of we peaked pretty much early 2021, January 3rd, 2021, and then we've had a precipitous decline as other altcoins, namely Ethereum, have been extremely strong. So where does that leave us? Looking over here at the Ethereum chart, the one thing that concerns me is if you look closely at this chart, you see obviously we had a very parabolic blow-off top move there, and then summer sell-off, and then a very strong recovery. But you see this kind of rolling top that we put in here. This is very distribution Wyckoff style. And to me, this looks like very much a Wyckoff distribution pattern on Ethereum. Now, I've got here some target prices for potential bounce level, 3,000 being kind of the bottom of this next potential impulse down, as this markdown, I think, has already begun on Ethereum. What I'm going to be really curious to watch is the relationship between Ethereum and Bitcoin dominance going into 2022. What I'm really curious to especially see is, do we actually see a distribution event on Ethereum where Ethereum goes into distribution or is in distribution now, is in the markdown phase now, and then maybe we find ourselves in accumulation in this range? If that were to happen, if we enter accumulation, Bitcoin is currently in what looks like an accumulation pattern here. If you obviously go back to the summertime, this looks very close to this price action. Let me just grab this price action from here and slide it right over there. Obviously, we can see a lot of parallels between this price action and this price action, right? There's a remarkable amount of parallel going on here between these two sets of price action. If we see Bitcoin actually bottoming and putting in this accumulation pattern, that's a little bit ahead of Ethereum is still in its distribution pattern. So in theory, if you go back here, obviously, you are here on Ethereum, or maybe here, right? This is where I see really we're here on Ethereum, whereas Bitcoin's already well through its accumulation. Which, when I look at the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, what I see is signs of manipulation, of this breakout to the upside of this consolidation pattern. And perhaps this is a false breakout to the upside into resistance here. If we were to get a combined distribution markdown on Ethereum into accumulation for Ethereum, while Bitcoin is wrapping up its accumulation and starting its markup phase, this obviously is going to reverse quite strongly and come back down to test these lower levels again. And of course, we shouldn't discount that this could also be a potential pattern that we're seeing on Bitcoin. So what we won't know is, until we break the range one way or the other, was this a redistribution schematic potentially, and we end up putting in our the reverse SOS pattern over here on the downside and break down. So I'll move that fractal off to the side there. What would that look like? Well, we had a distribution event here, and then we had a similar pattern and it broke down. And so there's a chance we could be range bound here and end up breaking down, while Ethereum, if Ethereum is in accumulation, we could have redistribution on Bitcoin while we have this distribution event on Ethereum into accumulation. So that's something to watch for. There's a lot of, again, fundamentals, the coins on exchange, and a few other things that lend me to believe that we're probably in accumulation, not a sort of distribution event. The biggest reasons I believe that are really most of the sell pressure has been coming from the exodus of China and from the market. And as those participants exit the market, the sell pressure there should finally be removed. And we've seen a lot of buying coming in from Coinbase specifically. So when we look at the different volume profiles, the different behavior of participants in the market, we are seeing indications clearly that there are still some players left in the Chinese market that were exiting, or they're being forced to exit. And that looks like it's coming to a conclusion potentially. And so as that wraps up, then the sell pressure, the constant sell pressure Bitcoin has had really since the first part of this year might lift, and we might get some price appreciation. In any case, you'd be hard pressed to say that this sort of pattern isn't playing out. This is very much what it looks like is playing out here. And what we need to watch closely for is, do we get a move back to the upside above resistance and then a breakout that'll tell us that we were in accumulation, and a move to the downside and a breakdown obviously will tell us we were in redistribution. So we won't know until we get there for sure. There's a lot of other data we'll continue to monitor as we try to decipher where we're at. Again, I would lean at least 60% to the long side that this is an accumulation schematic. There's also a few other little hints in here, but we won't know until it's really wrapped up. Now, again, moving into 2022, I'd like to spend more time and energy researching new interesting projects and finding new assets to invest in. But as of this point, it's really important that we get a real good grasp on what is next for the total market of crypto. You can see the total crypto market cap is very much just following the same price patterns we've seen in Bitcoin. Are we going to see another rise out of these levels, or are we going to have further downside or more sideways action? That we should know that in the next couple of weeks, and so that's going to really define what kind of projects we're looking for. And the reason I say that is, if you think about it this way, if we have a price increase and Bitcoin breaks to the upside out of here, likely it's going to be best for us to continue to stay focused on Bitcoin and tightly correlated assets to Bitcoin, and continuing to trade those as Bitcoin makes another leg up, another run potentially, and then we can rotate to some altcoins. If it's going to go sideways, then we've got a really different market that we're looking in the future. It's very different from what we've had in the past. And this is probably going to really benefit projects that, it'll be a more stable market, and that will really give us a leg up if we're doing our research and finding good projects to invest in. And this is where I think things like yield farming and making wise use of our funds, maybe in a sideways market, are really good avenues as well to look at. So looking at doing things like what we've been doing with Elrond, the Maiar launch, high yield, farming with up and coming projects. There's lots of other providing liquidity in different places and yield farming different places. Probably those type of strategies are going to do really well if we're going to enter a prolonged, what I'd call a crabby bear market, a prolonged sideways market. And then, of course, if we sell off, the main thing is we're going to want to protect ourselves if we're entering a phase of depressed prices going into a capitulation low. And in that case, we'll want to be, again, in the large caps predominantly, and start to move to stable coin as the price action dictates, and then be really hunting projects that are oversold, that are beat down overly and unfairly as a result of the sell-off to buy back into. So, really in any scenario, we're going to have a plan to move forward, right? So if Bitcoin breaks out to the upside, we'll trade Bitcoin as it appreciates upwards, and then we'll rotate to the altcoins like we had planned this whole time. If the 4-year cycle kind of just gets extended out and the Bitcoin market cycles continue to play out, but they just lengthen, then we'll know what to do there if that plays out. If we unexpectedly got less of an upside than we thought we were going to get with Bitcoin, and a lot of the fundamentals start to turn the other direction, and it looks like price is going to be heading down again, we're going to know what to do. Hopefully get some stable coins, get into large caps and stable coins, and be ready to buy capitulation lows, especially on mid and small caps that we really like, that are going to get really sold off and have a very low capitulation low in comparison to the large caps. And lastly, again, in a sideways market, I really think, obviously, we're going to be able to just, through fundamentals research, find projects that look good and take trades on assets. It'll be a lot of trading of altcoins as Bitcoin and the large caps go sideways, but also yield farming and providing liquidity and staking. Those type of things I think are going to give us the biggest advantage as well. All right, well, everybody, thank you so much for the support that we've had on this channel in our CTT Discord. If you want to join a really vibrant community of traders that are constantly sharing their ideas, different things that they're seeing going on, go look at the pinned tweet on my Twitter profile. I'm at Crypto Jedi, and you'll be able to see a link to a free public Discord community. It's a really good community, like I said, lots of really good traders in there sharing their ideas. But remember, everybody is sharing their ideas. And so always, no matter what, be cautious, whether you're on my YouTube channel, Twitter, on our Discord. Always filter it out with, we all have our biases and nobody has everything figured out all the time. So, of course, do your own research. If you don't, you're going to end up living in a van by the river. But again, thank you all so much for an amazing 2021. I look forward to sharing with you guys and continuing to grow as both traders and as a community as we enter into 2022. Take care.